Like, Josh should put out a video talking about why MMO felt better. Oh, old MMO felt better. And well, you all know how I feel about old MMOs. So yeah, we're gonna do that real quick, and then we will get into PSO. I gotta know if me and him on the same page about this. So yeah, let's do it. Like always, go to your chat.
Many long-time MMO players fondly reminisce about the days gone when MMOs were far less optimized than they are now, when the games were more of a struggle to play. The old guard complains about today's modern MMO conveniences like tutorials, fast travel, quest markers, minimaps, group finders, and the lack of need to communicate. Many say MMOs have lost the social soul they had so long ago and simply aren't as memorable. However, many of the modern advancements people blame were added as a result of players directly asking for them. Is it possible to design a game to be worse and yet in doing so actually make the player's long-term experience of it better? Can giving the player
we can hope 2023 and 4 gonna be good.
Immediately fun experience actually result in them remembering the game more fondly, and indeed even recommending it to players precisely because of the fact it is less optimized? The answer is both yes and no. It's a paradox of adversity.
You know, also, by being let out to my also had, like, more freedom that may or may not have been on purpose in some MMO cases, but...
within game design, and it's one of the main reasons modern MMOs feel the way they do. It's also what Blizzard was trying to get at when they said, you think you do, but you don't. So let's discuss the actual psychology behind it. As usual, a massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel going. More information on how you can support at the end. For now, let's begin. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Strife Hayes. I've been making videos about MMORPG design for years, and one thing that I hear repeatedly from both old players who played the game back in the day and new players who are just discovering them is that older MMOs were better. Now, better is a very subjective word. It's hard to define, it's different for everyone. But with so many old games still online, like the original EverQuest, or classic versions of modern games being released, like World of Warcraft Classic or old school RuneScape, there must be some element of design, some choice beyond just nostalgia, some reason people keep going back to older designed games. Over the years,
in some cases, they are still equally as good. They were back down.
Design, breaking down design elements, comparing choices. I've covered the idea of the meta, the chosen one narrative trope, fast travel, endgame, abundance of MMOs themselves, microtransactions, graphics, level scaling, but now I think I've managed to distill it down to the simplest, most base reason. I'm going to call it the paradox of adversity within game design. It's not the catchiest title, I know, but it explains why making something better for the player in the short term can sometimes remove its ability to have a long-term impact. It's all to do with the human experience of overcoming adversity.
Which is like the main reason about newer MMOs. Like PSO like a special case, but outside PSO it's all grabbing me like that whole thing of like, yeah, play it for like a week and like, oh okay, I understand this and everything at my fingertip. You know, the excitement of discovery, it's just not a thing in MMO really. But then again, you can say that about video games as a whole.
Consider the following. If something, say a task or a challenge, is immediately easy, it will have a high number of people attempt it and complete it, because it's accessible to a greater number of people. And because a great number of people tend to enjoy easier things, the task will see a relatively high retention rate. You could consider things like sitting on the sofa binge watching a TV show, or ordering a takeaway, getting dressed in whatever was lying on the floor, calling off a planned meeting because it's raining and you don't want to go. It's low effort, but immediate reward. On the opposite end of the spectrum are very hard tasks with very high rates of immediate failure, or a great deal of input effort required. Fewer people will even attempt it, let alone succeed. And because people don't enjoy failure, many will quit if the first few attempts don't succeed. This could be leaving the sofa to go to a gym, applying for a much harder job than you've currently got, cooking a full 3-course meal from scratch, dressing up in smart or complex...
On the case of PSO, be super easy, not rewarding. Be super hard, might not be that rewarding. As we have discovered with, any of it not hard, as we discovered with Origin Quests. And how you doing, Pin? Yes. Yeah, I'll be hopping into PSO when we're done with this. But I'm curious because you know, this is hitting very close to home. So yeah, I will be hopping on in probably about like 10-15 minutes probably. Yeah, that was gonna be my plan, cool dude. I was gonna run around and get that medal, and then after that, probably either one or two things. Either at that point figure out the whole Darkfall situation, or maybe red boxes. But yeah, like the getting the material is something I want to do. I want to be on ball with that time. Now that we are out of the hellscape that is the equalizer stuff, and I can actually hopefully get all 20 that week. But yeah, I appreciate it, cool dude.
Clothes, or attending a meeting if the circumstances are against you and you don't want to go. It could be learning a language or training for a difficult sports event such as a triathlon. It's very high effort with a very delayed reward. The paradox
Well, like I said, the rewards are garbage.
Reward for the low effort input is never as high or as satisfying as the delayed reward for the high input process. The intensity of the reward and the long-term value of it is directly related to the complexity and difficulty to achieve the process.
Wait, did you So did you already get a Kaiser weapon, or did you get one of the new relic? Goddamn Twitch. I would not doubt it with Twitch. I honestly would not doubt it, to be totally honest.
Put simply, if something is easy to do, you'll feel good in the process but not care about the reward in the long term. You likely won't even create a memory of either the process or the reward because it's nothing special. But if something is difficult to do, you'll likely dislike the process of doing it, but then the long-term reward of having done it will have more intrinsic value to you, and the memory you create will be much more intense. This is human nature. We want the easy and immediate, but we place much more long-term value on the completion of difficulty. Nobody wants to struggle, but everyone wants the feeling and satisfaction earned from struggling and succeeding. We don't enjoy the process of overcoming adversity, but we do grow from it. Indeed.
Yeah, like I'm pretty good. Literally, I woke up, rolled out of bed, and here I am. Like, I bet like the reason a little later starting the whole be right back thing, I was mainly waking up and getting food. So yeah, I'm doing fairly good. Yo, Mason, how you doing, Mason? Right now we're watching Josh's new video because he's talking about why older MMOs is more better / fonder for people compared to newer MMO, and you know that right up my market with how much I go on about Final Fantasy 11. So we're doing this, and then gonna be hopping into PSO once this is done. But doing good, awesome.
Indeed, the moments of unplanned struggle often become some of our fondest memories.
Yep.
It's very important to understand
Louise, I had like a billion stories in Final Fantasy 11.
Is not life-changing trauma. It's not extremely negative experiences that you wish you could remove. It means less than optimal, unexpected. It means more difficult than you originally anticipated. It's not extremely damaging, it's challenging within the context of the game. If you go camping with your friends and everything is absolutely fine, you'll likely have an okay trip, but if on the second night it begins to absolutely pour with rain and you discover there's a rip in the tent, you will likely hate it in the moment, but look back on it fondly, laughing with the group as you all reminisce the struggle you overcame. It's often the moments of struggle that we look back on and smile about. We defeated the enemy and we see value in that. If you ask older MMO players some of their best memories, they'll often tell you about all the adversity they overcame, standing selling items in the EverQuest tunnel or the Falador Bank, completing quests without guides, phoning friends in real life to organize a raid. There exists...
Or like one of them for me, like one of like the earliest but the most simplest like memory, like starting Final Fantasy 11 was literally being dumped in Sandoria on the port, because at the time when the game came out, when you started in the port, and having to walk through 3 giant areas, and in the fourth area, or you know, giant compared to what we had back then. And then the port literally being made of tunnels that just constantly loop onto itself. And literally spending the first few hours of the game just asking people, how do I get out of the city? And how do I get a weapon? And then literally the fourth, like, almost the whole day I played Final Fantasy 11, the 4th day, was literally just trying to figure that out. And then I made it outside, killed one bunny, and fell asleep. So, like, any of them, like, the most simple, or in the case also of 11, was, like, the random dungeons that would be like, oh, yeah, well, you got to go actually behind an invisible wall, and you had to just walk through and hope you knew it was there. Or, like, or going into an area that had holes in the ground, and at any point, if you kill to get too close to the edge of the hole, you will fall in, and then it'd be a super high monster down there that will one-shot you, and then in return, you literally lose hours upon hours of experience. And just having that threat, like, moving around, going to different campsite, like, yeah, like that type of stuff. Yeah, I really hope, like, the VR MMO turns out okay. Because I know now we got, like, a whole bunch of people doing it. Just, like, I kind of feel like, I would say, this is, like, best case scenario, would probably be, like, with VR MMOs. If, you know, if they get to a point that is, you know, attainable, is also having the learning curve of learning how to do, like, actual 3D design, with, you know, especially how VR is, and then having to jump over the hurdle to get to a point that is, like, what this whole discussion is of, like, newer MMO, the more polished state of them. Like, I feel like VR, just in VR in general, have, like, a good couple of years before we get to a point that, you know, they are polished to the point of, like, okay, these are on par with, like, normal non-VR games. And that learning time, and then mixing that with MMO could get, like, very interesting. Depending on, you know, of course, how long that timeline take to, you know, fulfill anyway. Hey, how you doing, Doc? Yeah, Team Peak was still a thing back then. It was like, I remember back when I was playing 11, like, I felt like me and my guild, it was like Team Peak. We were still using, like, MSN. We were still using, like, Yahoo Messenger. We were still, like, actually posting on, like, method boards. Like, yeah, they were still around back in my 11 day. Bit the Final Fantasy 11 day. Dude, I do too, Mason. Like, the funny thing is about Final Fantasy 11 was when I did my 100% playthrough, which I gotta go back to since they actually added new story content. Because I did a completion one of all the story, all the expansion, got every class, unlocked every summon, unlocked, I believe at the time, like, every mount, every NPC summon. Like, I did pretty much a completion one. The only thing I technically didn't do was, like, the AF for, you know, all the classes. I would like the only thing I didn't technically do. But, I did get my AF for my main class, though. But, with that being said, though, like, playing through that and playing through retail, how Final Fantasy 11 is nowadays, well, it's streamlined to a point where, like, don't get me wrong, you still have that, like, early 2000 jank. But at the same time, it's like the way they have streamlined it to the point of you can pretty much just solo Final Fantasy 11 now, outside of a handful, outside of a few occasions. There we go. And yes, it's plant time. Like, I still really enjoyed it. I remember once I completed it after I got done crying at the real ending, or what the real ending with Wapacy of Vanadil stuff. But as soon as I was done doing that, I started thinking, like, could I go back? Could I play Final Fantasy 11, like, in, like, 2003, 2004 time period? I think at that point was, like, I get the public time would be, what, maybe up to Wing of the Goddess, roughly. And at the time, I was like, probably not, because, you know, I have all the memories, literally what, you know, he had talking about here. Like, all the memories of, like, man, there was a lot of bullshit back there. I don't know if I could do it. With that being said, I ended up, like, maybe a month or two later. It was a couple months later, maybe. Actually, it might be more like a year. But either way, I ended up being like, okay, I completed everything Final Fantasy. I don't want to redo the sub because I did everything I always wanted to do. You know, stuff I've been trying to do for like 15 plus years. I finally did it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna hop on a private server. Let's see. If I go back to like 2003, 2004 Final Fantasy 11, would I enjoy it, or would it just be, like I said, what he talking about, like, appeal to, like, you know, the nostalgicness of it? And I got back on, I made it to, like, well, I stopped, and the only reason I stopped it because we moved, and I quit PCs, and I didn't never felt like going to the F4, like, you know, resetting it up back on my PC, my new PC I had at that point, or the one I'm using right now. So I stopped, but I made it up to the point where I was in Juno. I was getting ready to do like the quick 4 island stuff. So like level at that point would be what, like 20 to 25. And it took me about 2 months, 2 to 3 months to get up to that point because, well, Final Fantasy 11 is a slow game. And it was like one of them cases doing the whole like, okay, these are the 75 day, you die, you lose 90% of your experience, you can D-level, you can, of course, you know, ends up dying, D-leveling, and then just being naked, like 3 hours away from the closest city, real life 3 hours. And, like, all of that shit. And it was one of them cases that I will like, oh my god, no, this is still great. Like, any now being in my mid-30s is like, as a game I played in, you know, my late teens, like, everything about it, I still absolutely love. And it wasn't just like a nostalgic thing. It's just like, no, it's still good. Problem is, it's also probably because I had the background and, you know, someone that will have done Final Fantasy 11 and jump into the private server, you know, that might be a real awakening for some people, especially people who are more in, like, any MMO past, like, 2007. Also known as just any MMO after WoW, I guess. But with that being said, like, man, it's still really good. So lucky enough, you can go in affiliate them days if you want. Fat Track to ruin it. Yeah, because the thing was, like, when they did the rebalance in Final Fantasy 7 for, like, teleportals, originally you couldn't teleport. Like, in Final Fantasy 11 originally, you could find crystals that you could set at home points, so when you die, you go back to. But the thing was, you could only have one of them on at a time. And if you needed to, like, say you, like, out in the middle of nowhere leveling, holds the town at, like, 3-4 hours away. If you set your home point in the area you are because you think you're going to die, or you're leveling, you scared of dying, and having to walk all the way back, like, at that point, like, if you wanted to go back to town after the leveling, partying, you had to walk all the way back to town. Or you do the whole thing, you hope you're around a town that have a class that you still have level 1, because it was the thing people did. So everybody kept, like, one class at level 1. And they would, like, set their home point back in cities and just hope they don't die. And then what they would do would be, if they knew another city, so say you go to, like, Juno, which was, like, the middle capital for the base game anyway, and you want to go back to your home nation, people will set their home point in a home nation, go to the closest city, change it into that level 1, and then walk outside and die. Because since they level 1, they don't have any affiliate to lose, so it doesn't matter, and your character instantly go back to where you started from, or wherever you got your home point saved. And if you didn't do that, or you were just really out in the boons, and like, have fun walking for the next few hours. Because the closest thing Final Fantasy 11 had to fat travel back in the day was, you could, if you was a black mage, or a white mage, I should say white mage, but if you're a white mage, then you could teleport back to, the, like, shrine castle areas. They were called, at the time, everybody called them quags, because they look like giant quags in the ground. But you could teleport to them, and then, like, okay, each of them is, like, maybe 3 zones away from the whatever capital city you want to go to. So, like, a 3-hour walk become more like a 45-minute to an hour walk, as long as you don't die. So that made it more bearable. Or if you were the black mage, you could use warp, and then you could teleport back to your home point, wherever it might be, without dying. But the problem was that them the only 2 classes that had it. And as you can see from that, yeah, equal a lot of people becoming taxi cabs, like me. But yeah, Discord, I don't think Discord technically ruined it. Like, Discord, like, one of them cases, like, it just, it no different than, like, TeamSpeak and all the stuff back in the day. It just back in the day, you know, conversation with people was actually interesting. So, you know, a lot more people did it outside, you know, outside of exclusively, just being on, like, Discord and whatnot, like people do nowadays. But on the Pokemon War? Yeah, I need to look into that. I haven't heard about that one. We're playing Guild War 2. Sadly, Guild Wars I never fully got into. Like, Guild War 1, I remember when it came out. At that point, I was still playing 11. But I had a friend, she absolutely loved Guild War. Like, to this day, I believe she still plays it. I remember she always was trying to get me into it back in the day. And, like, sadly, I just did not have a PC that could run it good. So I kind of missed out on all of that. But, so, like, most of my Guild War memory is all just literally being at her house. Just literally sitting there while she's just over here, like, you know, clicking away, you know, doing the thing. Yeah, social line with soul meeting, new people, Discord, nothing. Yeah, because it's like, that's the biggest thing I will say. Like I said, any going back into, you know, the 90, 2000, like, we always had stuff to, you know, communicate with people outside of the game. But the thing was, any with that being a thing, you know, it wasn't the thing. Well, you know, like nowadays, like, one of my, like, half-act complaint about a lot of gaming stuff nowadays, especially on the MMO side, of, like, you know, oh, just anything. I guess you can count that for any, like, PvP game as well. Well, you get the people that just screaming and, you know, trade chat, you know, shouting their lungs out, you know, random, you know, wasted slurs and whatnot. But I felt like, the more social side and not the asshole side is, it feel like nowadays, or have been for the last, like, decade at that point, so I shouldn't say nowadays, been like that for a while, of, like, less about discovering people in-game, but more discovering people outside the game. Might it be through, like, Discord, maybe, you know, through, you know, whatever, like, third party, like, WhatsApp, or whatever, you know, just, like, well, like, MMO back in the day, I think also the main reason why the communication was, like, way more in-game, beyond the normal, like, you know, it being new and everybody being, you know, amazed by it, was also having less options, and also if you were playing MMOs, and also the way the internet was in the late 90s, early 2000s, is, you know, you would have friends that you would want to play with, but no guarantee they ain't had a PC, or if they had a PC that could run it. And, you know, at that point, it became, like, way more, like, isolated to the game itself. And then also on top of that, it'd be like, you know, if people were using, like, MSN or Yahoo or TeamSpeak or whatever, it also was, like, way harder to communicate, especially while you were playing the game, since, you know, the majority of people only had 2 monitors, and the last thing you want to do is, like, constantly be tabbing out. So yeah, like, and also voice chat wasn't as good back then as well, so in return, you know, everything stayed kind of more in-game. Well, nowadays, I just feel like everybody is off into their own, like, little bubbles, doing their own thing, and not really communicating in-game at all, really. You know, like, no dissing. It's like, you know, you got the people to do Discord. You got, you know, for example, what's happening right now is, like, literally talking in, like, a Twitch, like, YouTube chat. You know, the same thing. Like, yeah, when we play PSO, outside of a very few occasion, like, if we talking about something or we doing something, more than likely we using the chat from the stream for it. So, like, you know, no dissing here. Like, now, it's the same thing. But yeah, I do admit the time where everything was way more, like, isolated to the game, as well as, you know, once again, it's just being old, of, like, how, like, don't get me wrong, game back in the day, like, MMO-wise, you know, people were doing guide, people were doing whatnot for it, you know, making content for it. Any of it were more, like, back then, you know, tech, because, you know, YouTube technically wasn't a thing in the case of some of the MMOs. But you know, a lot of stuff, like, education-wise came from other players, not so much, like, instantly going to, like, website and be like, okay, the game, in the case of, like, New World, like, okay, the game been, like, data mined, like, 6 months in advance. You know, everything you need to know, down to the detail. You know, it kind of take away that other, like, motivation to, you know, talk to other players. Because back in the day, if you did not know how to do something, 9 times out of 10, there would not be nothing online about it, so you had to just go find someone and be like, hey, you got a sword I want, how do you do it? And hope they don't lie to you. So, smithing, killing people left and right. Oh my god. Oh yeah, yeah. Wanting into the zone after Agwan. Oh, talking about like the whole like mortal trains that people used to do, and I totally didn't take advantage of it as a white mage. Totally didn't do that. Well, people used to sit there and train. Yep. Summoning while outside of town. Yeah, because that was like one of the cases like back in them days of like, you know, you casting the spells or using your weapon mattered, which is like, you know, you would have people literally just, which I always loved, especially for the summoner, because as someone who never, in a heyday, because like I said, when I went back, I did 100%, I got all the summons. But I actually did every summon twice, so I could unlock Finwheel as a mount, because I love Finwheel. But, like, back in the day, back when, like, hey, you need a party of, like, 16 people to do this shit. I remember always wanting to be a summoner, and I would literally go outside of, like, Sandoria, because they did it in Sandoria. They did it in every town. But going outside whenever there was just a summoner out there summoning, you know, to level up the summoning stat, I remember I sat there for the longest time and just, like, eyeball them summons, because, man, they were, like, the core thing in Final Fantasy 11. Like, my god. Taxi White Man, that's what we was. Like, that was literally what it was. And, like, if you was someone who wasn't able to beat out, like, Japanese bots, you know, on random notorious monster that only spawn once every week or once every, like, 3 hours or something, and if you didn't have, like, lightning reflexes, you know, to kill the monster to get the item, put them on the auction house, like, the only other real option was what? Like, the most easier option would have been maybe selling crystal to, like, crafters. So I remember, like, I became a white mage mainly for 2 reasons. On one hand, I couldn't find parties at a royal, technically, or, you know, because maybe it's just me, but then again, there was also more royals back in them days. So I'm like, okay, getting in a party is a pain in the ass. But every party need a white mage, especially once they started, you know, getting into the extra classes that were better warriors than royals. But so I was like, okay, I'm gonna become a white mage so I can get in party easier. I can level, hopefully do story content. That didn't happen at the time. And also the other reason is to make money. And that was also the other reason why I leveled my black mage. I leveled my black mage high enough to learn warp. So I could go into Juno. I'm pretty sure you remember this. Like, I could go into Juno and just be like, offering teleports. And then literally just list all the teleport points I had, which was, what, 3, maybe 4 quags at the time, because it was, like, still, like, you know, Tampamantia, Wing of the Goddess time period. And I remember I would literally just have my home point in Juno, and I would, like, set in the main area. People would scream out for it. I'd be like, okay, here you go. Then on party invite, be like, okay, pay me. They pay me X number of gil. And then it'd be like, okay, I'm going to teleport you. I'd teleport them and be like, well, good luck, soldier. And then I would just walk back to Juno and just went and repeat to make money. Or also, as the thing about the aggro chain would be also go in there as a high white mage, summon a whole bunch of enemies, have them follow me to the zone, and zone through, and then all the monsters will walk back and kill everybody on the way. And then I would wait like a minute or two till everybody is dead, walk back in, and then start walking up the corpse and be like, hey, I can revive you for X million, or not million, but X, you know, percentage of gil. Pay up. I was literally like the mobsters of, like I was literally one of a cartel in Final Fantasy 11 now thinking about it. But I used to do that as well all the time. But yeah, white mage taxi service was a real thing in 11. Over and over, yeah, because yeah, the only way you could build up your magic was literally to cat a spell or do a technique over and over and over, which in return made it well like that was like way more important than whatever level your character was. No, we're between 30. Yeah, that is like the thing, like. But don't get me wrong, in the case of like PSO, you know, you could go to like the main hub and have like a billion conversations, but most of the conversations are not really any about the game at all. They're not really like education stuff, and not really about learning or doing much of anything. But yeah, like like nowadays, it's like one of them cases of like it's faster to just look up like a YouTube video than trying to do a conversation with somebody. Still friend on Facebook till this day. Yeah, I wish I was in my camp, like with my guild. I wish. Like, sadly, with like my guild back in the day was I had a whole bunch of Final Fantasy 11 friends because you had to back then. And I remember like all of them. Like, I want to say we was on like TeamSpeak or something. We had it might not have been TeamSpeak. I know it was like one other one that was like TeamSpeak that was around back then. Either way, one of the people in the guild paid for it because it was like a monthly fee with like a private server chat thing. And we used all the time, but the thing is when Final Fantasy 14 came out, 1.0, original Final Fantasy 14, not when we born, but the original. The majority of everybody in my guild but one lady all went to Final Fantasy 14. Ventrilo, there we go. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I had a feeling you could remember the name. I can never remember the name of that, but yes, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But like we all like pretty much just talked on that every day, and when we was in like Final Fantasy, and then Final Fantasy 14 came out, and every one of them, but that one lady, all literally went to Final Fantasy 14, and I never saw them again. I would say they probably took around in 14 because, we was a very masochist bunch, especially if you're playing 11, you kind of had to be. But yeah, like they left, and since one of the people that left were paying for it, ended up, I don't remember like he shut it down or he bought this one. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, it goes, it like wasn't able to get on it anymore, and then like pretty much over half our guild just vanished. And then over the next couple of months, people just started quitting, and and then they all gone. So sadly, like all my original friends in 11, like kind of lost contact with them. And then like when we did our 100% playthrough a couple years ago, I ended up kind of similar here. Ended up making a whole bunch of friends in like the Final Fantasy category here on Twitch, and like everybody that streamed it around that time, like literally all of them quit as well. Like they pretty much finished Vanadil and then they all just disappeared. So like a one-in trend with me in Final Fantasy 11. Every person I ever meet in Final Fantasy 11, one day would just vanish, and they just gone forever, For the old Final Fantasy 14. Man, I wish I had that. Because the thing was about 14 at the time. The funny thing was, the main reason I didn't jump on the 14 right away, I wanted to, but the main reason I didn't is my PC was garbage. Because the thing was, at that time, I had, me and my ex-girlfriend at the time, oh god, what the hell? Hang on, chat, hang on, that's not supposed to be on white, there we go, wait. That is something I was working on later, but ignore that, chat. But, like, we used to play, like, I would play on PC and she would play on the 360. So we only had one 360 at the time. And since I owned it on everything at the time and still own multiple copies of Final Fantasy 11, I was like, okay, here you go. You can have that pop ball drive. We'll play on PC. But at the time my PC broke, like Windows got fucked up. I don't remember how. I don't think it was Viber. I think Windows just got fucked up because it was still like Windows Vista days-ish. So at the time, as I should say not much distant, he was still poor, but at that time I had like maybe $10, $20 to my name after everything was done and paid and done and over with. So like I couldn't exactly get a PC that was like strong enough to play 14 at the time because 14 was very demanding at the time. And to the point that when my window broke, I ended up downloading Linux, and I spent like 2 or 3 days learning how to work Wine at the time. I can't tell you how to work Wine nowadays, but at the time I learned how to work it enough to play Final Fantasy 11 in a very funky state. just so I could keep playing it, which, you know, I did, you know, for another, like, 6-7 years after the fact, but yeah, like, I just did not have the ability to go to 14, and then 14 died, and, you know, then they had to reboot it, so, but yeah, that's the main reason why I never played 1.0, but man, I know 1.0 is, like, bad, but at the same time, as someone that knows the master addictedness of Final Fantasy 11, I wonder if I would have even liked it. I feel like I probably would have, technically. I'd be like that 1% of the population that still missed 1.0. And one day, hopefully I can find me a private server if it doesn't always exist. Because I know there was a couple that was being worked on like years ago. And we could actually experience it. And also, what's going on, Doc? What don't you have time for? But anyway, there you go. Final Fantasy 11 chat.
In design, a Goldilocks
Back to you, buddy.
zone of player difficulty, where something is not too easy and not too hard, it's just right. You're not going to frustrate the player and prevent them from finishing the game, but when they do finish the game, they're going to feel an immense satisfaction that they have overcome.
Yeah, that's my thing. Like, yeah, from everything I know about 14 1.0, it was like, man, it was really close to 11, so I probably would have, to be honest. Hell, wasn't like some of the zones at the time were literally just like whipped out of 11 almost? Because I know I've seen like videos and pictures of some zones and like, wow, that literally looked like the same zone, just prettier.
Overcome a perfectly balanced challenge. So how does this all relate back to MMORPGs? Well, remember when Blizzard told you think you do, but you don't?
And by the way, you don't want to do that either. You think you do, but you don't. Remember when you had to like spam cities and say, need a tank, need a tank, need a tank during the Burning Crusade days? You don't remember that because now you just push a button that says go to the dungeon. You don't want to do that.
Here's what they actually meant. It's two elements of human psychology combining. The abundance of choice, meaning we don't stick at one thing when it gets challenging and can easily switch, and the value we gain from overcoming a challenge. Many years ago, there weren't as many MMOs, so you had a relatively captured audience. If you didn't like one game, you could go to another, but you'd very quickly cycle through all possible games. The player base didn't have great variety, and a lot of these MMOs were difficult. The players would face adversity in all games, such as no group finders, meaning you had to talk to people, and creating a group could take a while. No quest markers on the minimap, or minimaps themselves, or even in your journal, so you had to write down NPCs' names and locations. No market boards or global trading systems. I remember doing that 11. Player-to-player trade only. No tutorial, meaning you were placed directly into the world and you relied on the community to help you.
So I was just talking about figuring out how to get out of Sandoria.
Install, with the process often going wrong. This isn't the game itself, but it's still part of an adversity experience. Adversity means a difficult or unpleasant situation, and overcoming it is a good feeling. Now, the adversity in a game doesn't just need to be the boss design or the gameplay. It can be the meta elements, such as having to play a game without a guide, being unable to switch servers and play with your friends, corpse runs, experience debt, almost cryptic levels of description for both quest guides and item descriptions. Older games had a lot of adversity within them. And as we know, while people like the sense of accomplishment which comes with overcoming adversity, they don't always like adversity in the moment. People quit difficult things while they're still in the difficult bit. With older MMOs, this wasn't a major problem for player retention because the players simply didn't have many other places to go.
Yeah, we just dealt with it, and then we love it.
Player base with a sparse selection of MMOs, all of which had heavy amounts of adversity, and your choice was overcome it or stop playing. And if you stopped playing, then you simply stopped caring. And if you did overcome it, you felt intense personal pride.
Also, we can't forget about the whole thing of MMO being, you know, subscriptions back then. So, any of you paid for a subscription, and the only stuff you had to do. Also, most people continue playing just because they didn't want to waste the money. So, not only did people quit, but also had to worry, like, I don't like that I'm going to quit, like, well, I just spent like $12-15. Shit, I need to get my money worth. And they will keep doing it and then it'll put through or, you know, completely ends up hating the game by the end.
But as more MMOs were made and player choice increased, the designers saw both opportunities and issues. If they made the player face too much adversity, the players wouldn't push on because they had no other choice, they would leave because now they did have choice. And this put designers into a strange position. They needed to make the systems the players would experience immediately very easy to prevent the players leaving, but in doing so, they were reducing the potential long-term connection the player would have to that system because no one remembers the easy accomplishments.
Yeah.
Take the group finder. Without it, players are forced to talk and communicate and connect. Bonds will form, friendships, rivalries. You have to time your gameplay sessions to your guild. The act of forming the group becomes a satisfying ritual itself. And when
Also, you learn the people and reputation that tied to people.
Is difficult. The process of forming the group is the adversity, and the feeling of having formed one is now substantial. But then the group...
Okay. That's like one of them cases that we remember, like the reason I said back in the day in Final Fantasy, we never slept. Because, like, once you got a group together, and the group then fall apart in the first, like, 40 minutes, it's like, well, we're going to be here for the next, like, 9 hours. Oh, you haven't slept? Tough luck. Which is the main reason, like, back in the day, we all had, like, call signs where we would take naps between encounters. Because, you know, between each encounter could be anywhere from, like, 5 minutes to, like, 20 minutes. So, like, well, time to take a miniature nap, and then wake back up and kill the monster, and then go right back to sleep. Like hell you wanted to get out of them, like, once you had one. Exactly, you gotta get them level, because if you don't get them levels, it's like, you're gonna be just shit out of luck for a lot of the content.
Group Finder comes in to remove the adversity of forming the group, and in doing so also removes the feeling of reward of forming it. It's positive for players with very little time, but negative for players who value the process of making the group. The lack of quest markers on your minimap,
and being a part of the community and with Torrent
at all, or the lack of fast travel, means you now faced adversity of talking to every NPC, finding a quest, memorizing the world.
Yeah, because we didn't have Markles over no head back down.
Friends with a class who could teleport you around. The act of exploring and progressing was the adversity. That was the challenge. It wasn't easy, but for those who could do it, it was fulfilling. Then the minimaps, teleport spells, fast travel, and icons and quest helpers and auto run came along because players were leaving the game before even finding the quests due to the difficulty of the process, and it had to be made easier to increase player retention, or the players would leave.
Also, especially back in them days when not only choice, but every company wanted WoW numbers. And the other thing to also keep in mind here, like, the harder the game is, the faster, you know, casual people will leave because now they have choice. But the thing was that since everybody wanted WoW numbers, you have to, like, make it as easy as possible for them people to try to hopefully hook them for longer, which in return is where we get, like, the Final Fantasy 14 way. I know other MMO does it, but, like, 14 as an example of literally having, like, a billion things to do now and just becoming a giant checklist, and it, like, you know, it never really hit a point as long as your mind fine with, you know, the checklist up of just being like, oh, I want a level. Okay, I don't want a level. I'm going to go play you triple triad. Okay, never mind. I'm going to go farm mount. Oh, never mind. I'm going to go, you know, farm, or try to do hunting log. Oh, never mind. I'm going to go make table. You know, just like having multiple things that constantly will just, you know, keep you in. And by making it as simple to move from one tat to the next is what helped to, you know, keep the numbers high, which is what everyone wanted and still want.
For a game which was doing it. Again, in doing so, you are removing the adversity of learning the land at the expense of the player's long-term connection to the land. Most players simply don't have a very long attention span,
about
or a great deal of patience to deal with failure or time-consuming systems, so game designers needed to remove any and all roadblocks to failure, and this became a double-edged sword because they were now taking the process of adversity and resulting satisfaction and replacing it with a mundane, easy process and no emotional reward.
And while in the process, also removing the soul of the game, which is with most MMOs. Like, don't get me wrong, you have games like 14 where the story is dramatically important, and, you know, your relationship with the NPC is very important. but also in a lot of other MMOs, especially for the people who doesn't, don't really care about the story stuff, is, and especially the more like open-ended the MMO is. Also, by removing the character interactions and making streamlining everything, you also lose your connection to the game, to the community, to the player, and then become very much a thing that is a thing in a lot of MMO where it becomes very much a isolating feeling. Where like, how many MMOs have you guys played over the years where it's just like, yeah, this is just a single player game with people running around the back. Yeah, so Old Republic, LNE 14, like, you start going into that camp, which, kind of also we move a little bit of, what make MMOs, the social aspect of it.
This paradox of adversity can be applied to lots of MMORPG design elements. There used to be fewer MMOs, so players had less choice, meaning you could make your game more difficult. You could add in more adversity, whether that's the difficulty of the enemies, the quests, or even understanding the systems the game is made up of. Players would have to conquer them, and so be given the reward for conquering them. Ironically now, if something is too difficult, players will leave and go to another MMO because there is so much choice.
And they all flee now, so...
ironic that the design which sets up satisfaction, adversity, is also the design which drives players away. In short, if you fill your MMO with player adversity, systems which the player must overcome, it will feel incredibly satisfying when a player advances through it, but it is also far more likely the average player will quit before reaching that satisfaction.
Yeah, because this is like one of them things of like, along the lines of, like I was talking about earlier, like the main way you keep people, any of people who don't want to be there, is of course by having the subs. Because, people don't want to waste money, usually. And now with every MMO pretty much being free to play with some type of sub as an option, or, getting into, like, the microtransaction stuff, it, like, at that point, like, you have no real loyalty to any of the game, or, in some way, maybe it's a good thing you don't. But at the same time, is... the player base that is worrying about losing money won't overcome this stuff. And then on the other hand, that, they can just, like point out, can just leave and just go play another MMO nowadays. And then for the people that do get hooked on the MMO that are tied to financial reason, not because of the game, is with most MMOs nowadays being way more into, like, cosmetic stuff, loot box outfits, accessories, like, that type of stuff. Them players, sadly, I shouldn't say sadly, because, eat their own hill, but is there for what they, spent the money on type of deal, like the whole thing of, like, you look at any for any game, or, like, for example, like in PSO with the whole, like, joke beforehand, and still kind of is, of, the true in-game fashion, is the whole idea, like, most of the people that do stick around because the money is, deeply invested, also kind of go into that camp, and also the same people that will, not, like I said, not just counting PSO, any MMO, any game nowadays, but, like, also the people who, their enjoyment of the game come down to literally, buying fashion, loot boxes type of stuff, and not actually, playing the game itself. So it's like, them players are ideally supporting the game, but not supporting the player base. So it's like, but at that point, it's like, you getting more into, instead of being like, I will do this because I don't want to waste my money, now it's more like, I have always spent thousands of millions, however much dollars on a wig or outfit. I can't walk away now, without something extremely drastic happens. So in return, like, fraction the player base. Not saying, like, every person that do the microtransaction stuff to that extent is like this, but it's still a part that is noticeable.
Because the process is difficult. And if you fill your game with easy systems which remove adversity, it is now much more likely that players will stick around and finish your game, but also they will feel very little connection to it because they never had to overcome adversity to get there. Difficult experience means less immediate fun, but a stronger long-term appreciation of it.
Which
An
at this
easy
point that is
experience
just
means more
dead.
immediate fun, but a weaker long-term appreciation of it. You only need to look at the modern-day video game difficulty mythos to see how we as players value overcoming adversity. The Pandaren who leveled to maximum without leaving the starting zone. Swampletix taking on the Theatre of Blood while locked entirely inside Mauritania. Let Me Solo Her, killing Melania wearing only a pot on his head. The Happy Hob, performing no-hit runs of the Soulsborne games, sometimes consecutively. Rendy achieving the level 3 Fire Cape in old-school RuneScape, finishing the Mario games without collecting any coins. We value and respect those who overcome adversity in games, and if that player is us, we end up valuing.
But at the same time, it doesn't work too well in MMO stuff outside of very limited cases, is of course the people that fully enjoy that is extremely limited, which wasn't a problem back in the day when, the bigger MMO had at most 2,000 people playing. Sadly, nowadays, that cannot keep a game afloat anymore, especially with the way budgets are nowadays. And even back in the day, they couldn't have. We seen by how many MMO ended up dying around the WoW time. And the thing is that it's not going to keep it afloat. I mean, MMOs are not going to really do that anymore. Don't get me wrong, you can still find a way to do it, of course. I'm pretty sure people are doing level 1 right now, getting Darkfall 2, but that is not the lifeblood of MMOs or any game nowadays, really, beyond a very, very small group.
And respecting ourselves. So the reason many players have fond memories of older MMOs and will tell new players that older games are better is because they contained a lot more adversity and playing them demanded you overcome it, giving you as a player that deep sense of satisfaction which comes with doing that. They may not be fun in the moment, but they are infinitely more satisfying to look back on. Modern day MMORPGs have removed as much adversity as they can because that improves the early to mid-game experience. The irony, of course, is you will retain more players, but you won't be generating those very human, very intense, very memorable experiences that come with overcoming an adverse system. It's why killing a boss after 100 attempts feels better than killing the boss after 1 attempt. You have achieved something difficult. The irony, of course, is that most players won't stick around for 100 attempts.
Yep.
They will declare it too difficult and move on to a different game. Many players ask for easy routes to be added because they focus on the gameplay experience of right now more than the long-term experience and satisfaction gained by conquering a challenge. The skill in games design is to find that Goldilocks zone, where a game is challenging and rewarding while not being frustrating to the point of making a player quit. Older MMOs had much less competition. Players couldn't just leave for another game at a moment's notice, and even if they did, it would be just as difficult. So that Goldilocks zone was much broader for older MMOs. When Blizzard said, "You think you do, but you don't," what they meant was they believed a modern-day MMO player base would quit classic WoW due to the adversity in the game's design, the lack of group finder and the lack of quest giver's location on the minimap, before they were able to reach the satisfying level of WoW Classic and value the experience that overcoming the adversity gave them. Modern Blizzard design seems to be remove all adversity at the expense of all long-term satisfaction. So the next time you hear an older MMO player saying they want old-style MMOs back, what they likely mean is, while they may not remember the less fun process of playing the game, they miss the end feeling of overcoming adversity that the game gave them. But what do you think?
Yeah, this is the reason why, like I have said many times before, From Software games are the only games that capture the vibe of the late 90s, early 2000s. Not only MMOs, but just gaming in general, or remote gaming, I should say. That's the reason.
Should modern MMOs be designed with fewer features so players have to push through adversity to gain the satisfaction of overcoming it, or should the adversity be removed to increase early game player retention at the cost of long-term satisfaction? Or should self-imposed limitations, such as RuneScape's Iron Man mode, be adopted by the game industry and made available for self-imposed adversity? What's the best design choice here? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you again for watching. Another massive thank you to the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel alive. You can support from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and Discord.
Here you
and
go,
as
chat.
always, have a great day.
But yeah, he not wrong. Like, it's just one of them cases of, like, you know, not a lot of game gonna really do that, like, on purpose. Like, hell, you know, the stuff I was, like, showing off. Let me see. I do that. I should say it about, like, it's, like, the main reason why a lot of MMOs, most of this stuff is, like, very much just on the side at best. But yeah, I don't think we will ever actually fully return back to that time period of MMOs outside of, like, private server stuff. And it's one of the things that just, you know, hopefully, like I was talking about earlier, hopefully maybe the VR thing being, like, so limited, maybe we can get back a little bit of it, especially some of the learning curves, but it's not gonna be the same. But yeah, like always, good job, Josh. And yeah, I get that is that. I agree 100% with him. So I guess if I put this up after the fact over on YouTube, which I might, make sure you do thumbs up, subscribe, hit all the bells. And if you're watching live already on YouTube, be sure to do that. And follow you on Twitch right now. Follow, subscribe, or Amazon Prime if you can. And of course, yeah, for anyone also watching on YouTube or after the fact, come on over twitch.tv/Maconn and get you some goodies. So yeah, and how you doing, Pip? Also, you get all the love from Miku as well. We can't forget about that.